Well, hello, friends. I want to welcome you to a special holiday Bible study entitled One Nation Under God. I am your host, Bishop Andy C. Luter. This is a part of my special 5-minute Bible study series, and I am delighted that you have joined us today. Well, let's begin here. This lesson is presented in recognition of Independence Day and is designed to acquaint the student with the spiritual and theological foundation for the forming of America. Now, friends, most of us have heard that America was founded upon the principle of the separation of church and state. However, what I want to question and press you on today is whether or not this was the case in the very beginning of our country's foundation. It should be noted that by the time the Revolutionary War had taken place, America had been in existence for over 250 years. Over that time, there was a gradual shift in thinking regarding the subject of religion. Most religious groups that initially migrated, or perhaps I should say fled to America, did so in response to the harsh treatment and prejudicial treatment that they were experiencing primarily from the Church of England. Now, I would remind you that in England, where most of these groups came from, there was an official state church. That was the Anglican Church, or the Church of England. And in that church, not the Pope, but it was the monarch who stood as the head of the church. As a result, several groups fled Great Britain and found their way to America. Some of these groups included the Puritans, the Pilgrims, the Quakers, Catholics, dissident groups which were dissident from the mainstream Anglican Church, Congregationalist groups, the Mennonites, and even the Baptists. Now, what is of further interest is that initially these groups carved out settlements that they not only presided over, but governed according to how they interpreted the Bible and how they best saw the practice of religion. Now you're looking here on the screen those settlements on the eastern seaboard: New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. In the case of New York, the Dutch Reformed Church was the dominant religious expression. In Massachusetts, you had the Pilgrims. In Connecticut, you had the Puritans. In Pennsylvania, you had the Quakers. In Virginia, you had the Anglican. And the list goes on and on and on. The point here being that when these groups left Great Britain and settled in America, they settled in geographical areas that they controlled, but they not only controlled, but presided over with their own religious preferences. In the beginning, these groups only allowed people who believed like themselves to live in those areas, and they had little or no tolerance for anyone of a different denomination or religion. You see here a gentleman in stocks and bound because his practice and his behavior was not consistent with the religious preferences of that community. Over time, and as the war for independence approached, colonists began to see themselves as Americans, primarily through the preaching of people like George Whitefield, who preached having a national consciousness. The point here being that people like George Whitefield began to preach giving Americans a national identity as Americans more so than as Anglicans or Catholics or Quakers or even members and residents of their colonies. When the Constitution was drafted in 1787, the overwhelming feeling was that America did not want any religion to have control over the civil liberties of any American citizen. Friend, this is very important because what you're seeing here is a shift from the idea of religious tolerance, which suggested that a person who did not believe the way I believe could share the same physical space that I have, to now religious freedom, where The architects of the Constitution didn't want any denomination, any particular religion, to exert control over the social life of any given community. Therefore, it became a constitutional mandate that any person born here or naturalized here was entitled to equal protection under the law, regardless of those things that made them different, like race, creed, and especially religion. Now, we have to take a look at this. Immediately after the election of President Obama, Senator McConnell said that he and the Republicans were dedicated to making sure that he was a one-term president. This wage issue is aimed at accomplishing that goal. So when we see controversies in the political arena, especially as it relates to the current president, it has to do with the overall objective and goal of making sure that the current president, who happens to be the first African American president, being a one-term president. Here is what we need to keep in mind and remember. We are not a one-issue constituency. Compared to the obvious good that the president has done, like health care, children up to the age of 25 being able to stay on their parents' health insurance policy, the removal of bin Laden, insurance companies not being able to disqualify you because of prior conditions or pre-existing conditions. All of that deserves our continued support. The alternative is a candidate who's promised to look out for the rich and abandon the middle class. Well, friends, I am Bishop Andy C. Luter, and this has been my 5-minute Bible study, a special holiday presentation for you on the 4th of July. I pray that you have a wonderful day. Please know God loves you, we love you, and we look forward to seeing you real soon.